This is second of 3 pre-conference workshops in the context of first international conference on interdisciplinary approach in social sciences. And we have with us today Dr. Naresh Agarwal from Simons University, USA. And he'll be talking on interdisciplinary research, staying within or pushing the boundaries of your field. Before that, our Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Naveed Akhtar, has joined us, and he will be delivering his inaugural remarks. So first of all, I would like to request Professor Dr. Naveed Akhtar for the inaugural remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Shakir Akhtar. Can you hear me, Dr. Shakir Akhtar?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum and good morning to everyone. The participants of our International Conference for Interdisciplinary Approach in Social Sciences. The Islamia University of Bahawalpur has been trying to promote the academic and research culture by conducting conferences, seminars, and webinars. I appreciate that Faculty of Social Science has taken the initiative to start a new cycle of international conferences. Although the departments of this faculty have been organizing multiple national and international conferences and seminars in their specific disciplines, this particular cycle will promote the interdisciplinary and collaborative research among various specialized fields. This year's theme, Response to COVID-19 Pandemic, a social sciences perspective, is a timely and required area to focus on. There are many social issues which need a collective, collaborative, and interdisciplinary approach to find optimum solutions. In this context, this effort of the Faculty of Social Science looks a step in the right direction. I am thankful to our international expert, Dr. Naresh Agarwal of Simons University, USA, for sparing his precious time for our audience who are very much looking forward to listen to it. Finally, I would like to extend my best wishes to organizers of this workshop and the conference. Thank you and allow
us. Thank you very much, sir. Well, interdisciplinary approach in social sciences, apparently it seems quite a fascinating idea, and but definitely it comes with its own dividends and concerns. Many social issues arising in the social context, they need a collective or collaborative approach to address. For example, this COVID-19 phenomenon, which has struck almost all walks of life, and every field is affected badly. So social sciences and different fields of social sciences has responded to this phenomenon. Today, Dr. Naresh Agarwal, our distinguished guest speaker, he's Associate Professor and Director of Information Science and Technology Concentration at School of Library and Information Science at Simons University, USA. He'll be talking on interdisciplinary research, staying within or pushing the boundaries of your field. So he'll be enlightening us what are the dividends, expected dividends, or what are the concerns, what is at stake while we prefer the interdisciplinary research. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shakir Akhtar, and also to Professor Dr. Naveed Akhtar, Professor Rubina Bhatti, and Dr. Salman bin Naeem. So I'll just share my screen now, and thank you to all the participants who are connecting at this early time during the day. So my name is Naresh Agarwal, And as we know, this is the theme of the conference that you are organizing, which is the interdisciplinary research. And this is the second workshop in that series. And I just wanted to use this workshop as a means for us to reflect on our role over here in terms of how far do we want to push this narrative in terms of this area of do we want to stay within our fields from what we have been doing, what are the concerns if we do that, and what are the opportunities, and or do we want to push to see if we can push the boundaries or reach across to our colleagues in other fields and departments, and what are the pros and cons of doing that. So there are a few terms that we have over here. There's a term research. So we'll talk about the research process a little bit, what we mean by that. And then there's the term interdisciplinary or disciplinary, and the boundaries as well. So this is my email address, agarwal@simmons.edu, and that's my website, web.simmons.edu/_agarwal. And if you're on Twitter, my Twitter handle is NareshAG. So this is a picture of my university campus at Simmons University. It is undergoing a lot of change and construction right now. There is a new tower coming up. There'll be a residential tower coming up in place of this science building, which will be demolished. And essentially, like, there's a lot of reorganization going on as well. The interiors look all different right now. And the university, it was started as Simmons College in 1899, and in 2018 it was organized into 4 colleges, and Simmons became a university at that point. And then a lot of disciplines also across the various schools got reorganized as parts of the new 4 colleges, which are part of Simmons. And we also have a separate residential campus. So my own research, again, if I have to slot that into a certain category, I would try to put that as part of information science or information science and technology. And when we think of information science, we can think of it as a sort of a triangle or a process of interaction between 3 facets, which is the person or the human on one side, and information on the other, and technology as the third end. So when we think of the interactions between humans and information, all that can be thought of as a purview of information science, but then we are often using technology as a mediator. So technology is a part of that as well. So at the center of this interaction is the person or the user, and this person could be all the attendees that are in this session right now. And from what I understand, I think you all represent various departments in the Faculty of Social Sciences in your university, and you are also trying to grapple into this question about should you be working more with each other or staying more within a discipline. And so as you grapple this question, right, and you are trying to attend various sessions of this conference and the pre-conference workshops that are taking place right now. So you could be a person or the actor or the user in this case who's trying to grapple with all these questions. You could be a conference attendee, a working person, a student, child, or any other person. And Professor Brenda Derwin, she describes, she's a retired professor from the University of Ohio in Columbus, and she currently lives in Seattle. So she describes this person as a body, mind, heart, and spirit moving through time and space with a past history, a present reality, and future dreams or ambitions. So it's basically pretty much any of us. And you have a certain need for information. This need for information today, I think, in our context is talking about staying within our discipline or pushing that discipline. So that's sort of the need for information that we have at the moment, because that's a question that we all are trying to address. And to address this, you might look for this information from one or more sources, which could be physical sources, human sources, or computer-based sources. Or you could, at times, you can find information serendipitously by chance, and you have this big surprise or an aha moment when that happens. And then you try to make sense of this information. Like today, you're trying to seek information from this workshop that's being held right now, that we all are a part of. And in that workshop, you all are connecting to it through our various devices at this moment, through a laptop screen or a desktop screen, or maybe from our mobile phones and tablets and so on. So it is basically reaching out to a human source, which is me in this case, and mediated by technology. And as you get this information from me, you try to make sense of it, of this information. You might accept some of it, reject some of it, try to relate some of it with your past experience. And as some of the things make sense, new questions arise. So your information need, even though the bigger information need is about the topic that we have about interdisciplinarity, you might have specific questions based on what we talk about. So then those questions later on, when we have the Q&A session, that will be sort of the cycle of looking for information and trying to get answers to your questions. And there are also at times when we avoid information, when we do not want to know what's going on. Like, for instance, something to do with the COVID-19 pandemic, or sometimes when we do not, what I've seen is that sometimes we don't respond to messages sent on as emails or on WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger and so on. So all this phenomena can be thought of as information behavior, and then it comes under this, the need for information comes under this area called context. So there's a certain context which gives rise to a need. In your case, there is a certain context about holding this first international conference that you are holding right now, and you also have maybe a mandate to try to move towards more interdisciplinary collaboration and research. So that's the context for the need, which is there in different cases. And a related area is knowledge management. So knowledge management looks at the same phenomena, not really from a seeking individual's point of view, but from an organization's point of view. So here it's information seeking, there it would be called knowledge sharing. So again, this is an example of a collaboration in a way, or touching the boundaries of two fields, where we look at information behavior as information seeking, or from knowledge management looking at it as knowledge sharing, and information creation and knowledge creation, and information use or knowledge use, and so on. So it's like two different but related fields trying to talk to each other in some way. And I got one comment saying the voice is low, that you cannot hear. Is that with everybody? Like, can you not hear me, or is it one or two cases?
We can hear you, sir.
You can hear me. Okay. So I think the people who are facing some difficulties, they might need to check on their computer settings, maybe for the speaker volume or something. So with that, this is my broad agenda for the talk today. We will talk about the research process. We'll talk about staying within the discipline or going across disciplines, and we'll also look at one or two examples from my research studies, which have spanned across disciplines. And I'll also give some examples from a book of mine that just came out, whose title is Engineering to Ikigai. Ikigai means your reason for being, or your purpose in life. So how different people in the book went about trying to find their purpose or reason for being, and how looking at interdisciplinary as a possible approach might help us discover our own Ikigai in our lives. So let's look at the first one. So research process. Now, what do we mean by research? So research basically, as we all understand this, and we all are researchers in different ways or in different streams of a journey, is the process of trying to answer some question. But rather than just trying to answer that question like based on our opinion, we come up with a question, and then we try to answer that question in a systematic manner by carrying out a systematic process of data collection. And that data gathering can be in a quantitative manner, working with numbers, or it could be in a qualitative manner, where we are trying to infer a subjective understanding based on the words that we gather from our study participants. And as we gather the data, we try to make sense of some of it, and and there might be certain frameworks, models, or theories which might guide us in a data collection process, and we try to use the lens of that theory to look at the data, and then as we gather the data, we try to see to what extent does the data test, like validate the theory, like we can be theory testing, or how does it differ? And based on that process, we can go towards the process of theory building as well, where we try to draw inferences from a study. We could be testing certain beliefs of ours, which we call hypotheses in positivist research. So as we test those beliefs to see which of those hypotheses are supported, and as we find that a number of hypotheses get supported, and as we conduct more studies, we can get into some sort of an understanding which we think might apply across various disciplines. So that goes into the process of trying to create theories or models or frameworks, which again can be used by other people in their own research. So there is this agenda setting and building on prior work that we try to do over time. Now the question is, should you be building on the work of the people in your own discipline, or should you be building on work of people across disciplines? Do all the theories that you use, should they come from your discipline, or should they come from across disciplines? Do the results of your study, do they apply only to people in your field, or do they apply to other populations? So and so on. So I think these are the kind of questions that we grapple with as we try to design research studies. So one of the first things that we do in research is to try to come up with a question or a topic as to what is it that we're really trying to study, what problem are we trying to solve. And then we also think of various methods of data gathering. We look at various theories which can come from different fields, and we'll also talk a little bit about context. So in the first state, where we talk about research topics or questions, let's do a small exercise at this moment. I've provided a link here, which is tinyurl.com/IUB-workshop2. So if you can go to your browser and go to this link, I'll also try to put this on chat so that you can click on it. Yeah, and then once you click on this link, it will take you to this page. It's a Google Jamboard, and on the left side you have various ways for you to write down your thoughts. So you can use a sticky note, like a small note on the left side over here, or there's a pen, and I think pen and text. So these are the three good ones. There's also, like, you can also write freehand, but I think either a text box or a sticky note on the left side, or a pen. And you can all right now click on this and write down what you think is your research question or a topic area. So based on the first few slides where I talked about my research area, I could click on the sticky note and then say that, and you can choose various colors of the sticky note. So maybe I'll choose a blue one, and I can say information behavior and knowledge management. These are my research areas in a way. So you all can write this down, and we can see if this is working for you all. And the panelists can also participate. Yeah, thank you. I think we got one sticky note here on health information outreach, fake news literacy. Yeah, we'd want all our participants to do this exercise, just so that we know that it's working for you. Anything that you're interested in, any question or a topic or area. Define health, literacy, and numeracy. We found user studies, information technology, health information, continuing professional development, information literacy. Okay. Access to healthcare. Yeah, you can click on this sticky note. That works out well on the left side. Scholarly information seeking. Are there more areas that you are interested in? Do you all see the link, which is tinyurl.com? So okay, I got one. You can usability studies. Any more research questions, topics? I was hoping to get like lots of them, hundreds of questions right now. Okay, so let's continue. And you have access to this link, so you can keep writing if you want. And I had created 2 pages for this. The second page is also the same one, but the first page where you could also write here. And as you think of questions or topics of interest, you can write more than one, and then you can add to it. So when we look at funding priorities for research grant agencies, so this is from a US context. So there are these various websites. So one is called grants.gov. Yeah, we got one question here. Why are certain populations being impacted more due to the pandemic than others? So yeah, that's a good question. So here when we look at grants.gov, here there are various kinds of research grants that are there that people mostly like they can based in the US they can apply for funding from various agencies. So that's a good site for looking for various grants. And there's another example from one of the foundations called the Russell Sage Foundation. And I was just looking at it early this morning, so I just thought of using this as an example for the talk. But when you look at the funding priorities over here, they talk about different kinds of things. So they're interested in the future of work, so which supports innovative research on the causes and consequences of changes in the quality of jobs for less and moderately skilled workers and their families. So that's one. And on race, ethnicity, and immigration. So this supports innovative research on the social, economic, and political effects of the changing racial and ethnic compositions of the US population, including the transformation of communities and ideas about what it means to be American. So again, so this is looking at the boundaries of a number of these topics, again, which are very difficult topics in some sense, like topics of race, ethnicity, nativity, gender, legal status of immigrants, minorities, and so on. And then the social, political, and economic inequality, immigration and immigrant integration, and then the social, political, economic, and psychological consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, and innovative research on the economic mobility and access to opportunity in the United States. And the last one here is again encourages perspectives from multiple disciplines, including economics, psychology, political science, sociology, law, public policy, and other social sciences, to further our understanding of economic, social, political, and psychological decision-making processes, attitudes, behaviors, and institutional practices in public and private contexts, such as policing, criminal legal systems, employment, housing, politics, racial relations, immigration, and so on. So what I'm trying to show you through this is that these topics can broadly fall under social sciences and also span like other disciplines. And there are a number of disciplines here which are sort of represented in many of these questions of interest, which funding agencies in the US are willing to put their money on in funding people who put in worthy proposals for research. So here, the Kaiser also wrote that it's psychosocial effects of COVID-19 as a topic, and Uzma Malik wrote information behavior and knowledge management. So when we think of a research topic, that topic just gives us a first level question as to what are we interested in, and it can take from months to a year or more to finalize a topic. But once we have a topic of interest and we develop certain sub questions maybe based on that, we need to gather evidence to see if our beliefs or hypotheses are supported or not, and we can look for various research methods. Now, one of the interesting parts about research methods is that many of these research methods are used across various areas of social sciences. So the same kinds of methods like experiments or surveys or content analysis or bibliometrics or observational studies, think aloud, usability studies, interviews, focus groups, ethnographic studies, grounded theory. Many of those are the same kinds of same tool set that we can think of as a kit for helping us answer our research questions. So even though we can work across disciplines, what will combine us or what will bring us together is the knowledge of designing a survey, for instance, designing and conducting a survey study or doing interviews and so on. So this pool of research that we have is often shared across disciplines, even though some disciplines might do more of certain kinds of research, but that also depends on the comfort level of the people conducting those studies, as well as what is most suitable for that research question, which is the better way of going about it. Then we can also look at a topic versus various theories. Now, the theories that we use in guiding our data gathering. So as we have a research question that we want to help answer, and we want to gather data using one or more of these methods, then we might have a theory or a lens to look at it, look at the phenomena. And this theory can come from our own discipline, or it can come from other disciplines like education, psychology, information science, communications, and so on. So there are some examples of theories, websites that I wanted to show you. One of this website is called, these are theories used in information systems. So here you have agency theory, behavioral decision theory, cognitive load theory. So these theories are used over here, but they come from various other disciplines as well. Design theory or task technology, fit theory, or media richness theory, prospect theory, social cognitive theory, and so on. So technology acceptance model. So these are again kind of the theories used in this field. Every theory will give you like every theory will give you a certain way to look at a phenomena. So for instance, if we want to use look at a study on let's say a use of a system, let's say a use of an iPad or use of a 3G phone or a 5G phone and so on, then you have the perceived usefulness and perceived ease of use as two of the factors over here that could affect intention to use and that can affect the actual system use. So in one of my studies, for example, so this was a study that I'd done when I was a PhD student in 2007 in Singapore. And in this study, we looked at factors affecting 3G adoption. So for this study, we conducted a survey study, and there we adopted this technology acceptance model as a theoretical lens. So perceived usefulness, perceived ease of use. So there we tried to have ease of use. We adapted that to mean convenience, and then usefulness we put it as like variety of service and service quality, and then price was again one of the barriers. And here you have an intention to use. So we have a certain value based on these pros and cons, usefulness and ease of use, and then that affected our intention to use. So here we had an purchase intention or an intention to buy in a way. So that's an example of using a theory to guide our research over here. So similarly, there are theories in different fields. This is a book from my field of information science, and this is an older book now, but still widely used. It's a 2005 book, and it has various theories of use in information behavior research. So there's theories like affective load, anomalous state of knowledge, berry picking, browsing, information poverty, communities of practice, and then flow theory, information encountering, information grounds, and so on. So a number of theories are written in this book. And then you also have another good site on theories from the field of psychology. Okay. So I think I had a comment asking me to put the links for the theories on the chat. So I'm just going to paste all the links right here. And so here, these are all the theories in psychology, so behaviorist approach and so on. So again, these are theories that have come from psychology, but again, can be used across different disciplines. So there are various ways and various means by which we collaborate or collaborate with people across disciplines. So it could be even be in the use of a certain theory from a different field than ours. And this was a book that came out in 2018. It was my book on context, where I talk about what do we mean by context as it relates to a person's interaction with information. And so before I go deeper into this, context is something which applies to any kind of research and any research question. So I wanted to get your understanding of what you think is context. So again, I'll put the same link again in terms of this is the Google Jamboard is back. So you can click on this last link. If you have it open in a browser, that's fine. You can just go to page 3. So on page 3, I have a question on what do you think is context. I want you to take a minute or two and write down your thoughts on what you think context is. And it can be anything. There are no right or wrong answers to this. And the panelists can also participate. And I think there are some audience members who are, okay, situational environment, we got one question, one thought there, that is good. So I think there's a question from Khurshid Ahmed. How can we integrate the collaborative learning with knowledge management? And what will be the best theory for this study? So yeah, this is we'll take questions like this at the end. Trying to identify a theory is a big exercise. There are a number of theories on this. Like there's a book on collaborative information behavior, and if we go to scholar.google.com, there's a book on yeah. So there are a number of models which are also showing up in the search results, and any of these models. This was the book I was talking about, collaborative information seeking. And so many of these models, collaborative information behavior. So they could be, you could use lenses from there as part of the theory. And let's see where we are with the answer. So we got two questions. Context is an environment. Context is an environment in which one operates or conducts research. Okay. What else? I want a few more answers before we proceed. Because this is a workshop, so I want it to be slightly more interactive. It's slightly different than a talk. So I'm hoping that we can get more participation from the audience. I think some participants are raising their hands right now. Let's see if I think that okay. Bilkis Khan.
No, I think I lowered my hand, but still it seems like that it's still up. So I apologize for that.
But do you still have a question?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'll keep the questions for the end.
At the end.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay. Can we have some more thoughts on what do you think is context? Okay, from I think there's from Dr. Oasis. That's all I can see in the chat. Yeah, Dr. Oasis Gilani says the circumstances that form the setting for an event, statement, or idea, and in terms of which it can be fully understood. Okay. So I'll just write that down in the notebook, in the note here. So we got some thoughts on what we mean by context. Context is a situation or an environment. There were two answers on environment and one answer on circumstance. Anything else on what we mean by context? Okay, so going back to my slides here. This is from my book on context. So I think two people wrote that context is, yeah, I think we have one more answer. Nurul and Nasir says the prior understanding about a situation with which you relate any new concept. So again, understanding about a situation is there. And I think you want to speak, I think, let me see. Okay, I think hand is lowered. Okay. So a lot of studies have looked at background knowledge, and we have seen this as an idea, an item of which it can be fully understood. So background knowledge, understanding. So I think we got some thoughts as context as understanding, or context as an idea. So situation, environment, understanding, or prior knowledge as some of the things that we have seen. So a lot of research looks at context as environment or container as well. Something where the user or the actor who we're trying to study is based in something that surrounds the person. And the reason I talk about context is because context will apply no matter which discipline you're talking about. Every discipline, when you think about when you study the people in a certain setting or situation, you're always talking about a person in context, or that will apply to various research questions that you're trying to investigate. And context as a setting, like some kind of a house or an environment where the person is. So when we talk about your research topics that we were looking earlier on, right? When we looked at, for instance, when we go back to this to our Jamboard here, and we had all these topics: health literacy and numeracy, scholarly information seeking, usability studies, access to healthcare, and all these kinds of questions. Then you can see what setting are you trying to study this question in libraries, in schools, in universities, in for-profit companies, in certain other kinds of, I think maybe like social work settings, in religious places or in everyday life and so on. So you could have these various kinds of settings over there. And Dr. Shakil Ahmed Khan wrote that context is also regarded as phenomena that is going to be observed through your study. So yeah, I think that is a slightly the controversial question, saying that is what you're actually going to is actually what you're studying is context, or is context is everything surrounding that, is everything apart from that. But yeah, you could argue that what you're studying is also context, or but yeah, then you have to separate it slightly from the question that is there. And Dr. Sarfaraz Batul says, in one research, how much research questions could be addressed? It all depends on the size of the research. You could have multiple research questions, or you could have one question. At the minimum, one question. Some studies have 3 to 5 questions. And then if you have, the bigger the questions, the more data you generate, the more difficult it is to conduct. And then you could generate multiple papers out of it, or you could be part of a research program. But typically, I think 1 to 3 questions is kind of a norm when you think of a research study. So you could also think of context as a role, like studying doctors or studying lawyers or studying cyclists and so on, some kind of behavior of theirs. Or you could think of, I think somebody wrote situation in the answers over there. So context could be thought of as something that happens to people, a situation that we are thrown in. Like for instance, right, the COVID-19 crisis or the situation, pandemic that we have is a situation that we as a world are thrown in. So that's something that happens to people. So that's a context as well. It can also be certain kind of constraint that we have. And I think 1 or 2 of you wrote understanding as a context, or an idea as a context. So that is also true, where if context can be seen of as what's there in the mind of a person, or here actor here means the user or the participant that you're trying to study. So context could be of the mind. So one of the things which I wanted to clarify was that I think somebody here wrote in your answer is an environment in which one operates or conducts research. So it's more than, it's not so much about the researcher when we're talking about context, it's more about the participant. So Dr. Bilal has a question saying that, is context about all other variables instead of independent variable and dependent variable? So let me quickly clarify for the audience what we mean by independent and dependent variables. So here you have something that affects. So in this case, this is variety of services is something that affects. So that is our variable, independent variable. And service quality and price are also independent variables. So it is a cause in a cause-effect relationship. And purchase intention is our dependent variable, which is the effect. So here we have convenience and perceived value as mediating variables. So what I think the comment which was there is that, is context everything, by Dr. Bilal was that, is context everything apart from these variables? You can say they are apart from these variables, that something like control variables like gender, age, and so on. But it's much more than that. Like it's a whole lot of things when we think of context. So going back to this, we can have context could be something that is socially constructed. As you interact more with people, we form a certain kind of a shared context. So as we are interacting right now briefly through the chat and through the Google Jamboard and so on, then again we have then again we have a social construction of the context, or a certain shared understanding that forms, or a common ground. And so what I did in my book is that I tried to look, based on literature review, I identified that context could be thought of in these 7 categories, or 7 elements, which I call elements of context. So it could be the actor, or the person you're trying to study. It could also be the environment, as some of you talked about. It could also be the task at hand, whatever activity or the problem or the situation that you're trying to have. So again, some of you, there was one answer which talked about situation. So actor, environment, situation are three facets of context. Context is also the need that you have, what information is required. So for instance, today we are trying to answer the question of staying within your discipline or going across discipline. The need for information again is a part of context. The person that you get information from, or the system that you get information from, the source of information, that is also your context. The relationship that you have with the source, for instance, whether you're comfortable or not with the source, that is also context. And the time and space when you're trying to do the study or ask a question, that's also context. So Salim has a question as what is key feature of context research? So it's context is not so much about context research. Every research will have context, no matter which research you're doing in whichever discipline and whichever question you're trying to answer. And so these are the key features, these 7 facets: environment, task, need, actor, source, relationship, and time and space are what I concluded from my research, that these are the, if you take care of these 7 things, you kind of capture context really well. And also, if you were to do research on your own personally, you have something called a personal view of context, where you're talking about all the things, the way you look at context. But when you collaborate, let's say this is a collaborative information behavior, when you collaborate with another faculty member or another researcher from another discipline, then both of you have your personal view of context as well, but both of you also have a shared view. So that shared view is something that we share across each other. Like for instance, all of you from the Islamic University of Bahawalpur, you have a certain shared context. All of you in the Faculty of Social Sciences have a certain shared context because of being in that faculty. Or all of you being in a certain department have a certain shared context. Or maybe all the people with a certain height or all the people with a certain area of interest, they will have a certain shared context. And stereotyped view of context is that when we do not understand the context of people, or even of our people you're trying to study, and we try to form a certain stereotype of theirs, saying that, oh, that person's context or something. So that is a view of people's context we do not really fully understand. So this diagram here is trying to show the context of an actor who has a need for information, and which is brought about by a certain environment. And you, because of that need, you have a certain task that you need to perform. For instance, your boss in your company is asking you to do something, or your teacher or professor is asking you to complete a certain assignment. And based on that, a certain information is required. And then you look for information from one or more sources. And depending on your relationship with the source, if you are really close to the person, or if you have a comfort level, you might think of that source as part of a shared context. Or if you think that you do not really understand that system, or you're not very familiar, then you can think of that as a stereotyped context. And you have this information is sought in a certain time and space. So these are examples of certain variables across context. So for actor, it could be age, demographics, work role, tenure, and so on. For environment, it could be the organizational structure, culture, goals. Task could be, again, the nature of task, complexity of task, difficulty, urgency of task, and so on. The need for information, again, the type of information that is required, whether it is important or not. And again, the system or the source, what kind of source is it? It's a human source or a computer-based source, and what are the apps supported by the source, and so on. Is it easy to use? Is it easy to use? Like what we got from the technology acceptance model, like perceived usefulness, perceived ease of use. All of that are, again, characteristics of the source over here. And the relationship that you have with the source, comfort level, quality, expectation, familiarity, and so on. And the time and space, is it time of day or week or year, synchronous or asynchronous interaction, and so on. So these are just a few of the variables that I've listed here. The book has a much more detailed list of variables when we go to these parts. So when we have, let's say, this part where we're talking about elements of context. So here it has a more detailed table about talking about all of these various types of variables which can be used as a design in research studies whenever you're trying to incorporate context. So Dr. Bilal is asking, does context have a strong connection with the generalization of the study? No, this is context is when you're trying to study your user initially. in trying to set the user as to what is it that you're trying to study. Like when we're trying to study, let's say, people trying to cope with COVID-19 pandemic in hospital settings, that's a certain kind of a setting that you're trying to study. Generalization is more about your external validity. It is about which groups or settings or populations can you apply the findings of the study to. So most of the time people end up studying university students. So those kinds of studies cannot really apply to the general population. So that's a question of sampling. So whenever we want to generalize the findings of a study, we have to sample our study participants from that particular pool of people that we want to generalize our findings to. So then when we go to this, so that was about the research process. Let's talk about the discipline versus multidisciplinarity. So here you have the question is about, should you be staying within your discipline, within the silos that we create, or the specific little cells or little homes that we have created for ourselves, or should we try to push or break these barriers and go towards different disciplines? And I'll talk about a few topics in this: disciplines in social sciences. Courses is the college that I come from at Simmons University, and we'll talk about yin and yang, serendipity, and synthesis. So you can think of your disciplines as silos. It possibly has possible connections with other disciplines, but most of the time we are not. A lot of the times we don't explore those connections, and we try to look at the same phenomena from the perspective of our discipline. And what I found is that when you look at different people, and when you go for talks and conversations with people from different disciplines, you find that they might have similar interest to what you have, except that they call it something else and you call it something else. So a lot of the times it might be that you have the connections, but we're not aware of them because we just call them by different names. So conversations and attending talks and trying to find commonalities will help us uncover certain kinds of similarities that we have with people across disciplines. And it might also happen that sometimes you might have more in common with one or two people from another discipline than you might have with some people in your own discipline. So your research interests are very personal, which are based on your past experiences, and if we keep an open mind, we can find a lot of connections with people both within a department but also across in other departments and faculties. So when we think of multidisciplinary research, we're really trying it's an opportunity for us to try to break certain barriers and to build a bridge over here. So this is from your website at the Islamic University of Bahawalpur, in your Faculty of Social Sciences, where you have had all of these different departments represented in social sciences: applied psychology, library information science, social work, public administration. So one of the things to think about is that what are the kinds of research questions that each of these departments might be investigating. And as you identify research, let's say you identify the faculty members in all of these departments, and then you list down the research questions that each faculty member has. You might be surprised that some of the questions are similar across with these various departments. And then you might find possible areas of collaboration and some things which might lead to areas of common interest. So for instance, in one of the studies which I describe later on, where I talk about non-response behavior, what do people feel when the messages and calls on let's say WhatsApp are not responded to? So that is something that would be of interest to library information science because it forms a part of human information behavior, but it could also be of interest to media studies because that's a part of communication and the use of media over there. It could be of interest maybe to applied psychology because that's about how it affects the emotions of a person whose calls are not responded to, and there could be a certain economic impact to that as to how does it affect the sale and design of mobile phones. So there could be different kinds of ways in which even a single research question might have applicability or generalizability across various disciplines or areas. So this is another website. This is a Google Scholar Metrics. So when you search for Google Scholar Metrics, you will find that you can search for various journals in different areas. But when we go here, there are categories here. So let's say if we go to social sciences, Then across social science, it's showing us the top journals in social sciences. And this journal listing keeps changing because Google updates it very often. But then we can see that there are lots of different subcategories of social sciences here. There's military studies, political science, public health, bioethics, architecture, archaeology, ethics, history, human migration, family studies, and so on. So one of the things we notice is that this listing is much more comprehensive than the listing that we had on your university website in terms of your departments. So many of those areas might fall under different departments over here. So, or you might find that certain areas fall in more than one department based on your interests. So this is kind of like a very raw or listing or a certain categorization, but it's never a full categorization because different people categorize things in their own way. So there's one question by Kaiser Hayat who says, to what extent personal biases through personal observation of the phenomena under study can be minimized? There are various ways to minimize bias in studies. You can do that through proper sampling, so sampling is a big part in terms of minimizing bias in a study, because if you do the convenient sampling or just sampling based on the people you have, then a lot of those biases will come in. Your design of research survey questions, for instance, do you have leading questions or double-barrel questions and so on? Those will be big things in terms of research design. So there are various ways in which you can design a study carefully to try and reduce the biases, but it's almost impossible or very, very difficult to completely not have a bias at all, though you can try to minimize it to a large extent. And Salim has a question saying that, is research a profession or information? It's both, I think. You can be a researcher and you can also think of research as information. You can also think of research as a verb or a process that you carry out. So here, these are the various colleges in my university here. So after the reorganization in 2018, Simmons University formed these 4 colleges. One is the Colleges of Natural Behavior and Health Sciences, and it has these various departments. And we also formed the School of Library and Information Science, joined with the School of Business and Math and Computer Science and Statistics to form the College of Organizational, Computational and Information Sciences, which we call courses, but it has quite a number of terms over here. And then there's the College of Social Sciences, Policy and Practice, which has the Department of Sociology, Public Health, Education, Economics, and Social Work, and so on. Now, if you notice, right, here, in this case, a School of Social Work is in a different college over here. And in your university, where we had, I think I closed that link, it was here. So in your university, the School of Social Work was part of the Faculty of Social Sciences. So you could have various ways of putting certain departments or schools as part of different groupings. So how you group them is the kind of collaborations that you want to help foster within your university. And then the association that I come from, and I just recently became a president of that, which is the Association for Information Science and Technology. It has these various the special interest groups based on the interests of the membership, like arts and humanities, digital libraries, history and foundations of information science, information needs, seeking and use, metrics, knowledge management. So again, health informatics. So these are different disciplines in information science, but if you notice carefully, all of these are also cross-disciplinary, as in a given social media. Each of these would be of interest to people across from different disciplines. So for instance, knowledge management is of interest to people in the management side, organizational behavior people, the finance people, maybe even in economics and in social sciences, and so on. So it's like, even though disciplines are part of a certain discipline, like all these areas, but they could be of interest to people in various other disciplines. We recently started a lab called Information Science and Technology Lab in my school, and so we got together with a group of faculty members and then we started this lab. Let me just show this to you. So here, what we tried to do was that there were like 8 of us, and we try to come together to see that what are our areas of interest. So each of us, we created a Google Doc. We try to write down our areas of interest, and as we wrote down our research areas, which would be like 2 to 4 areas per person, then we try to find something common across our areas. Whatever was common, we try to club it, and then based on that, we said that okay, as a lab, we have these areas of interest. So similarly, if you wanted to cross-disciplinary research within your university, within even the Faculty of Social Sciences, you could ask all your faculty members and your PhD students and so on to list down the areas of interest, and you can combine the common areas, and then not just in terms of departments, but as a faculty of social sciences, you could create such a listing of areas that are of interest to your faculty across various departments. So it's a way of looking at research which would be of interest to people across your faculty, and you could have newer opportunities of getting research funding or more research collaborations for journals and conferences and so on. So this is from my book on context, where I write that units such as seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, and years help us to simplify and abstract and enable us to make sense of time. However, categorizing and classification do not reflect reality. There are countless colors, even though only a small number is used commonly in language. So even though we talk about red, green, blue, and all those colors are only what we teach to children, but in nature we have like so many different colors. So moments and instances of time again are artificially classified as years, months, days, hours, minutes, etc. to help in interpersonal communication. So similarly, all these classifications that we have, right, of disciplines are in a way artificially trying to classify human knowledge in a way, or the kind of questions that we are interested in studying. So when we look across disciplines, we become much more open to knowing or learning itself, or the question that we want to investigate itself, rather than being limited by a department where it is studied in a particular way. So it provides us with like much greater opportunities in different ways. So one of the things which I like is this symbol of yin and yang. It is a Taoist symbol, and I think we all must have seen it in different ways. But here it talks about, let's say, the idea of good and bad. So the good has a little bit of bad in it, and the bad has a little bit of good in it, and the good tends to go towards bad, and the bad tends to go towards good. Or in a similar manner, any phenomena, when we think, right, there is this, they both balance and complete each other. So if we think of being in silos over here, or staying within our discipline, that has its own benefits to a certain extent, that you all can, it helps us distinguish a field from some other field. But within that siloing, you can use theories or methods and all which apply across other different disciplines. And the other way, when we're trying to collaborate with people across disciplines, we might have certain areas or perspectives and so on which are very focused on our discipline. So it's not that we have to choose one versus the other, that we have to do only research within a discipline, or we have to only collaborate. We can do both. Even as we collaborate, we can be thinking of ways to distinguish ourselves. Even as we distinguish ourselves, we can be thinking of ways to collaborate and help inform each other through our either generalizing of findings, or looking at drawing people from different populations, or drawing from different theories and so on, or different research methods. So it's not like it's one way or the other. Professor Brenda Derwin says something very interesting. She says the human struggle is to stay in line and also to stay out of line. So staying out of line is basically trying to be in a silos, trying to be our individual self, trying to distinguish. But staying in line also means that trying to find something common with the people who are different from us, or disciplines that are different from us. So Dr. Bilal says, is commonality in context essential for research and subjects being researched for better research? So I think, from what I understand in the question, is that I think, so Dr. Bilal is talking about commonality in context, but context itself is a huge thing. So when we think of whether context is common or not, before that we need to define what we mean by context. So I think the simple answer is no. Commonality of context is not important, and neither is it possible, I think, that we have a common context. Most of the time, even between two people, it is almost impossible to have a common context, because even though, let's say, we are all researchers or faculty members and so on, every time I talk to somebody, my context or my understanding of the world or the field changes. As you talk to someone, even as you attend a talk, you go back as a different person than what you might have come in. And so we are constantly changing people, or like we as human beings are constantly changing. So we cannot have a common context, even though we might think that we have a common context just because we are from a certain country or a certain race or certain ethnicity or speak a certain language and so on. But we all are different from each other. We have certain commonalities with each of us, but we are also different as individuals. So context will always be changing and different across individuals. So why interdisciplinary research is important is because it facilitates serendipity. So serendipity is when we encounter things, when we get surprised by what we find, when we're not really looking for something, but we find something by chance or by accident. So I have this other paper which is on this area of chance findings. So here, let me close these extra tabs. Yeah, we talked about this. So let's say that yeah, this was a paper on definition of serendipity in information behavior. So here I talk about as we have this seeking and searching for and looking for information, but we also have this just something that we find by chance. So why serendipity is important is because serendipity leads to innovation, it leads to creativity, and research has shown that certain types of people, people who have a prepared mind, are more open to serendipity, and they're known as super encounters. They encounter information by chance more often than what other people might find. So what you will end up doing is that when you create mechanisms in your university for people to collaborate with each other, you are actually rewarding the super encounters in your university or in your faculty, those who are able to see connections across various disciplines. And these kinds of people are the ones who will bring about the greatest creativity and research which spans across different, which has wide applicability. So, and more people can be trained to become super encounters. So serendipity has a very big role, but for serendipity to happen, we must be open to various kinds of spaces. So for instance, when you go to a library, even though you went to look for a certain type of book, you happen to see another book by chance on the shelves, and that led to a new insight, not necessarily based on the question that you're trying to answer at the moment, but then some other kind of a question. So this is, I'll just show you a model by Professor Sander Erdélez, information encountering. So this is a model. So here when we have, you're going about doing your task, looking for some information, but then you suddenly notice something which is different, and then you examine it, you capture it, and you go back to your current task. So this process of noticing, right, is most likely will most likely happen when you are talking to people who are different from you, who are talking to people who work in different disciplines or do different kinds of research. And that is where these conversations that we have with people across disciplines really provides a fertile ground for serendipity to occur, and that is why this is like really important. And it also helps in synthesis, the combining of often diverse conceptions into a coherent whole. So for instance, this is an example over here where we have a very simple visual examples of two very diverse concepts. Let's say that we have an eagle, and then you have an arrow leading to a logo like this, or you have a hippopotamus or an ice cream. So you have a logo that's over here, a phone and an ice cream, or a chili and a knife here. And there were some other interesting ones down below. Yeah, this is a banana and an aeroplane. So you get like an interesting logo. So what it shows is that, like, again, a lamp and a chili, and you get like a chill lamp or a chili lamp, you get a logo for this company. So you can have two very different things combined to create something very interesting. Like here you have a watermelon and a sickle combining to create this logo. So that is the kind of things, a very visual example to show you what interdisciplinary research could lead to. So there are some studies that I've done. One is studies on non-response behavior. This is on response to non-response, how people react when the smartphone messages and calls are ignored. So this paper got the best information behavior paper in at the ACES 2020 annual meeting last year. And there's another paper that has been accepted with revisions in the ASLIV journal. So this is looking at the phenomena from a sender's perspective as to how people feel bad when their calls and messages are not responded. And the other one is looking at it from a receiver's perspective. So this is one study. So in this response to non-response, how people react when their smartphone messages and calls are ignored. So this study found a lot of things as to how people, depending on the state of mind, people might feel okay, or people might get really anxious. So a study like this, right, even though it's coming from me, who is looking at it from an information science perspective, has applicability to communication research and to social media, to the design of mobile phones, and so, and also to positive psychology. So there is a lot of different kinds of applications, or different kind of people who can come together in a research of this type. And similarly, there is this other study which is looking at toward a disinformation behavior framework and model of the fake news phenomena. So again, the fake news phenomena, I have a model for this towards the end of the study that I would propose, and this is published in the ASLIV journal. So this is a model for how fake news spread over time, how there is a user has a certain bias, and again, there are various algorithms on social media that can be used to deceive people into believing fake news as true. So again, this has applicability for media studies, for computer-based algorithms, technology ethics, information science, and so on. So I just wanted to point out these studies as possible examples of how research studies conducted in any one area can have wider ramifications in many different areas. And this is my website that I wanted to put out there. I'll just put the link. So I'll put the link for this in the chat. Yep. And this has what I've done is here I've taken my research publications and try to classify them again in various areas. So under information behavior, studies on context, information behavior, information seeking, mobile information behavior, non-response behavior, serendipity, ikigai, information encountering, disinformation, fake news, sense making, health information behavior, and knowledge management in different settings, and learning, education, research trends, happiness, and so on. So again, this is one way of trying to classify information. But you can, as you can see, a number of these studies have applicability to more than one setting or more than one field. I think there's one more question by Bilyamin Popola. What is to be considered in selecting the appropriate theories for our research? So that's again a difficult question. Usually you look at you have to be familiar with theories. Before you can think of what is appropriate or not, you have to have read, at least be familiar with various kinds of theories. And then as you are looking in Google Scholar, you might find something which really helps inform the particular study that you are trying to, particular question that you're trying to answer. But trying to find an appropriate theory is a non-trivial task. It can take like some time, and talking to more and more people helps, because somebody familiar with some other theory might be able to say that, oh, this theory might be good for you for your particular problem. And I think there are a few more slides. Let me just get to those. So those are examples of studies. In the last part, I just wanted to talk about my book on Ikigai. It just came out at the end of September and in October this year. and it's come out in two versions. This is the international version, and it's come out from Singapore, and this is called "You Know the Glory, Not the Story." And the Indian version, which came out for India and the rest of South Asia, so India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, the Maldives, Afghanistan, all these countries, Nepal, Bhutan, they will come out as Engineering to Ikigai. So what happened was that between 1993 and 2012, the Singapore government gave scholarships to people from India and China to go to Singapore to study after class 12 and to study engineering. So every year they would take about 50 students from India, from all over, from different parts of India to two of the universities. And I was one of the recipients of the scholarship in 1995. And they did that for 20 years. So there are around 1,000 people who got that scholarship. And they all went on to become engineers, but then they formed the Ikigai. Ikigai is like a Japanese word, which means your reason to be or your purpose in life. So they found their purpose in life in different fields. And so what we have brought about is from those 1,000 people, we have picked 25 stories and brought those 25 stories in the form of the book. So why this book is important for this today's talk is because even though they were all going to study in a certain field, which was engineering, and many of them were in computer engineering or maybe some other forms of engineering like mechanical or materials engineering, as they looked across and as they explored more, they became different people. One person became the head of Facebook India. One person became somebody became a writer, somebody became a dancer, somebody became like a world traveler, somebody became a Hollywood film editor, one person even became a monk. Some people started like social work organizations. So there are these various stories. So Ikigai is when you combine what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. When you combine all this four together, then you get what is something called your Ikigai or your reason for being. And so this story, one story, this is some examples. This is a boy who grew up in Goa, in the beach city in southwestern India, and then he found himself in a competitive in Bangalore when he was 10. At university, he gave up his job as a financial consultant to become a volunteer in Africa and then South America. So when he went back to Goa in a guest house shower, a frog jumped at him. So then he decided to start India's first backpacker hostel. And then, so now he works to bridge technology and hostel. So again, it's a kind of an interdisciplinary work that he does. And so this person, Baisakhi Saha, she lived in different Indian cities, and so she had sort of a back injury at the university, and she traveled across different continents, went on to become like a computer graduate, to an English teacher, a German interpreter, a Spanish translator, and now she gives TED Talks, and she's an international speaker and performer. So again, an example of spanning disciplines and going from one to the next. And Varun Vishwanath, again, he got interested, even though he did engineering, he got interested in theater and the performing arts. And then he gave up, along with his day job as a banker and headhunter, he learned how to produce and edit short films. And then after he went to study in film school in the US, and then started his new life as an editor in Hollywood. So now he's a film editor and part of the Motion Pictures Editors Guild in Los Angeles. So these are various examples of people who are open to exploring more across disciplines, and they went on to find various vocations or reasons to be in life. And my own story is one of the 25 stories in the book. So what I did was I wanted to be a doctor until class 8 in school, and then when a sister's friend told me that I should be looking at studying math and not biology, so then I decided to be an engineer. So I wanted to be a computer engineer. Then I got a scholarship to study that in Singapore. I did jobs as a software engineer, but it was in different disciplines again, from telecom to bioinformatics to digital cinema and so on. And then I did my PhD in the Department of Information Systems, which is a department which is often in business schools, but that was situated in the School of Computing. But I got interested in information science, and then I ended up getting a job in Simmons in the School of Library and Information Science. So all these movement across these various domains and disciplines, right, again helped me, I think, developed my sense of serendipity and being able to form connections across disciplines and topics. So there's a small exercise if we have time for it. I know we have 4 minutes before we kind of finish up for 1.5 hours that we had allocated. But if we go towards the end of the same link again, I'll post it. There's a small exercise for you. And this exercise is asking you to, let me put this in the chat again. Yeah, so this exercise is asking you about what you are good at, to indicate as when you go here, what do you love doing? What are you good at? What does the world need? And what you can be paid for. So if you answer these 4 questions for yourself, then you can come up with the question of what is the ikigai or reason for being. So essentially trying to answer this this framework for your own case. You could do this later as well, but trying to answer what is it that you love, what is it that you're good at, what do you think the world needs, and what you can be paid for. And then when you think of this ikigai, right, then relate that with your research questions that you indicated in the first slide, and to see if your research questions is similar to what your ikigai or not. And if there's a disconnect, then you know that you need to work across disciplines to try to bridge that individually. So as a department, you can look at the research interests of various faculty in each department and try to come up with research areas for the entire faculty of social sciences. And individually, you could do this exercise of trying to find your own ikigai in the Google Jamboard that I shared. Okay, so once we do that, this is a brief summary of the talk that we had, all the topics that we covered over here, and that's all. I think I'm ready to take your questions. I've also shared the links, the publisher links for the book, the INDISTA International and INDISTA South Asian version, and as well as Amazon links. And here's my Twitter handle, and another website called Project Oneness World, where I interview people. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Agarwal, for your wonderful, very well structured and very informative session. You have wonderfully covered all the interdisciplinary research considerations, talking right from the topic, selection of topic, and considerations about methods, and then theoretical considerations and ways of understanding our context in which our research has to take place. I was quite fascinated the way you have described knowing our options for taking interdisciplinary research, and quite a fascinating idea of serendipity, area of chance finding, and you have given us very useful, very interesting examples from your study. And finally, I hope everybody enjoyed the idea of this ikigai. Thank you very much, sir. We can have some questions from the audience. Please raise your hand or write your question in the chat box.
Thank you, Dr. Akhtar.
In fact, throughout your presentation, throughout the session, you have wonderfully engaged the audience by responding to their questions.
Yes, I think we got some questions along with the session. So I thought they apply to the topic, to that particular slide. So we took those on at that moment.
So I think.
Yeah, I think Dr. Salman has.
Can I ask one question, please?
Yes, Dr. Salman.
Yes, please, Dr. Salman.
Actually, it's less of a question. I need your comment. I mean, you know the context here at subcontinent, particularly Pakistan and India. When ones go for a job interview, they need a graduation degree in particular discipline. And as far as interdisciplinary approach is concerned, let's say one person does graduation in mechanical engineering, and then he moves toward information system or other domains and do specialization. So one of the major issue we have here in subcontinent, like I mentioned, is the requirement of the base degree for that particular job. How do you see that? I don't think that's a problem in Europe or in US.
So what we have, let's say people who come to study at Simmons University, they all get a master's in library and information science, MS and LIS. I mean, when they come to my school at Simmons. So when they do the masters, we have certain concentrations that they can do. They can either go to concentration in information science and technology, or concentration in archives, or concentration in school library, or they can do a design your own. They could take courses across any of these, irrespective of concentration. So that is even the kind of variation that is there just within a master's degree in library and information science. So when we think of engineering, let's say you give the example of mechanical engineer, or an employee looking for a certain discipline. I think there is some value in that. The value is that if you have a basis clear. So for instance, I tell my students to take a number of technology courses if they're interested. So when they take a number of technology courses, you develop a base in technology, or somebody might take a number of management courses. So they develop a base in leadership and management. So I think what a university needs to provide, like in your case, you need to identify your strengths and your weaknesses. So you need to see that across your disciplines, across your faculty that you have in your various departments, what is the areas of strength? Where do you have a faculty strength? And where do you have faculty weaknesses? Where do you have gaps, where you are not so strong? And whichever areas of strength that you have, you could create like a combined master's or combined bachelor's degrees. So you can have a student graduating from mechanical engineering, but also something else, mechanical engineering and data science, or artificial intelligence and something, or social work and something else, or only in one discipline. So I think what you can then create, you of course will have this one discipline that the student gets in, but you also get something else from another discipline. One thing I would want to say when we talk about interdisciplinary work, right? Your core must always be strong. If you do not have a strong core or a strong basis in any area, be it technology or library science or psychology or sociology or anything, then you cannot say that, then you cannot collaborate. For you to collaborate, you must have something to offer. So the best way to do that is to be strong in one thing, and then you can say that, okay, I'm strong in this, you are strong in that, let's get together and do something together. So it is more of a combining of strengths. If we try to do everything from everywhere, then we will not be strong in any one thing. So it is more of going across different areas, but doing a good job of each area as you are going. And does that make sense, Dr. Saman, in some ways?
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Agarwal. Now, let me see if we have some question or comment. Okay, so now to conclude this session, we have Professor Dr. Rubina Bhatti, Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences with us. She is also chair of this first international conference on interdisciplinary approach in social sciences. And I would like to request Professor Dr. Rubina Bhatti for the concluding remarks. Over to you, madam.
Thank you, Dr. Shakil Akhtar. And thank you so much, Dr. Naresh Agarwal, for very comprehensive and informative talk on interdisciplinary research. That is staying within or pushing the boundaries. And your message was so stronger that we need to, if we are going to apply the interdisciplinary or the multidisciplinary research, we must have stronger objectives that relates to the real world issue. So the purpose of that interdisciplinary research is to bring the holistic approach to the real world issues, problems, and the challenges. That is the application of different tools, techniques, information, data, perspectives, and theories from several separate branches of the some disciplines. to understand the problem and to address the issues whose solutions are beyond the scope of one discipline. So here arises the need for interdisciplinary approach. So we have got many examples in this regard, and you have given have been given answer to many participants who have joined us, and I'm very happy that we're joined by 200 plus participants here, and they have taken interest and they have given you a question, and you have been wonderfully answered, comprehensively answering those questions. There are many examples that one research problem or the issue or the social problem cannot be solved within the staying or limited to the one discipline. Like if we need to study the history of India or Pakistan, we need to study the anthropology, the sociology, and political science and archaeology. So then we will be able to study those concepts. As we organized the symposium on infodemic management some times back, so there the problems also related to many disciplines. That was not only in the domain of the library information science, that related to media studies, that was psychology and sociology, political science, public administration, because the public policies and stronger measures were involved to stop the fake news and misleading information. So obviously, for applying the interdisciplinary approach, we are going to encourage the creativity and innovativeness. We can say that most of the research problems or the social issues may be old, but interdisciplinary approach or multidisciplinary approach in research and pedagogy is required for getting the new answers, because the situation is changed. We are dealing with the new generation, and maybe some issues are old, or they might have some different dimensions, but we have to find the new pathways for meeting with the challenges of new era, because everyone, as you have been giving examples of information dissemination and health literacy and outreach, so we have to see the information needs and information seeking patterns of the different community. And we are all witness, the people related to our field, that we have been studying the information needs and information behavior of health related professionals, engineering, scientists, and several other communities. And to bring the interdisciplinary approach so that we can address their issues and we can fulfill their information needs for research purposes or for education purposes. So this is the further way out, and must focus upon that. So I also appreciate you have shared your book, that is You Know the Glory but Not the Story, and Ikigai, that is based, that is the Japanese word, what is your reason to be, or the purpose of your life. And this is really inspiring. I have also have read about it, and you have shared about some people's success stories, that they all went to achieve some objectives, or their parents pushed them to achieve such objectives, but when they explored them themselves, they found themselves in a different position, and they had to meet the demands of the market, and they have to achieve this self-fulfillment as well, because some people found more comfortable in the field of arts and literature, or the dance and the music, or being the traveler, or some in the field of teaching, or other areas. So we all have got the stories. I'm sure that all the participants who have joined us, they might have got their stories, and behind their stories, their parents' dreams are also connected with these stories. But when we get the glory and when we have a look at the past, so sometimes we had to stop and see, like, this is what I started for. That was the purpose I started for, and what I am here, that is achieved. That was my purpose. So these are all things. I still remember my story, because my father wants to be a medical doctor. So, but due to some certain reason, I quit that medical field and chose some other disciplines in my FSC. Then I switched to FA and BA, that was political science, philosophy, education, social work, and I studied those disciplines. And when I chose my master's path, I came into the field of library science. But when I started my PhD, I got admission in the Faculty of Education because the area of my research was not simply related to the field of library information science. That was the user education or the information literacy. So I found myself more relevant being in the field of in the Faculty of Education, because the quality education was not supported by the education library services and resources. So that was more interrelated. The education system in Pakistan or in any other area maybe, but in Pakistan, I saw the education system doesn't connect with the library system, because we are textbooks oriented, and also the examination system was involved in that. Annual system we have that time, and teachers' instructional techniques, their research, their teaching methodologies were not motivating the students to go to the libraries and consult various information resources. And that causes the problem that students become notes oriented and some textbook oriented, and they went on the rote memorization, something like that. We can you can also understand that people used to say that ratte pe chale jana and things like that. So so I explored the reason behind why students are not coming to the libraries. Is because their teachers are not pushing them to go to the libraries and consult different sources of information. They give them certain notes, and when they appear in exams, the assessment process was only testing their memories. That was not testing their critical analysis or the problem solving skills. So that was the problem. So I found myself more, I would say that relevant place being in the Faculty of Education to address the real issues behind that problem. Thank you so much, Dr. Naresh. And I appreciate that. I think it is the midnight at your place, and you are still with us. You have shared very valuable information and answer to all the questions. And your book is really inspiring. And I hope that all the participants would like to read that book and enjoy that. If you have online version, please share, because this is really inspiring. It is all about exploring yourself and exploring the requirements of the society where you are working. I really enjoy, because I have worked in international market as well, in some in UK and in some other places. So we do enjoy a lot, and but at the same time we face many problems too. So your book's title is really catchy, that you know the glory but not the story. So many stories are, but we don't have time to share the stories. Thank you so much indeed. And at the end, I'm so much thankful to Dr. Shakil Akhtar for moderating this event. And thank you to all the participants for joining us, all the faculty members here in Pakistan and abroad for being with us. And I'm thankful to my Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Athar Mehboob, and Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Naveed Akhtar Saab for joining us. And the support of all my faculty members, faculty heads of different departments. Dr. Naresh, you have seen the faculty of social sciences, various departments, and we have got interdisciplinary approach, and we have got cooperation and collaboration. And by having such collaboration, we are able to conduct such pre-conference workshops, and then we are going to move towards having a conference on 11th and 12th November, and you will be with us over there. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a very good day. And Naresh, have a very good night's sleep.
Thank you so much,
care.
Professor Bhatti. And I think that if there are more questions, people can email me. My email address is here, so I'm happy to answer questions in the email. And if people want to get the book, the gray book, Engineering to Ikigai, will be the South Asian version, because this is low price. The US one is very expensive, and this was so this will be like this is very reasonably priced, and this top link over here can be the link to get to for the ebook version. I think the first one, the Hello Ikigai one.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Agarwal. Thank you very much, madam. And on behalf of organizing team of this conference, I would like to thank everybody out there who joined us today for this workshop session, with an announcement that we have yet another workshop which will be held tomorrow at the same time, and we'll be looking forward to join us tomorrow as well. And then we'll be having 2 days for conference, which is also being held online, and we look forward to join us. Thank you very much, and Allah Hafiz.
Okay, Allah Hafiz.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Naresh.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and happy Diwali to you. And I enjoyed your pictures. Wonderful family and your friends, really colorful. Wonderful. I was in India back in 2010, and I attended Holi over there. It wasn't Diwali, it was Holi over there. Okay. Very colorful and very welcoming behavior I got there. So I was really always happy and interactive, being interactive with my Indian friends always. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Bhatti. And